Greetings and welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Poly Weekly News. I'm your host, David Danto, and this week we're going to be talking about our management tool, Poly Lens. A few weeks ago, I had a couple of my colleagues on with me, and they went through how Lens works and talked about some of the things that we were working on in terms of insights. And now I have my friend and colleague, Katherine Li, joining me today. She's going to show you what a couple of the things that we've developed specifically in response to what some of your needs are, and what you've asked us about, and maybe some of the directions we're going on in the future. So, Katherine, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell everybody what you do?
Hey everyone, thanks David for having me. So excited to be talking about this topic today. I am in charge of product delivery here at PolyLens, specifically for insights and analytics. And let's just dig right into it then when you're ready, David.
Yeah, well, before you do that, tell everybody what was your journey like coming to Poly? Where did you work before? How long have you been here? What's your life like? Very briefly.
So I've been here at Poly for 8 months. And before this, I was actually in business analytics. So which makes this journey a lot more exciting because I get to move from specifically digging out into the data, into the details, figuring out how to present data, and then moving into the strategy side, this vision side. And so data has always been my bread and butter, and I love talking about it. And it's great to see it live in PolyLens now.
Terrific. Thanks very much. That explains a lot to us. So yeah, it's an interesting transition. Now you're dealing with actually clumping the software that's building the data. And data was one of the things that our customers asked about most when it
Yes.
came to PolyLens. They would like to really get a better view and a better capture of what's going on. So where did we take that? What kind of new insights are we dealing with?
So like you talked about back in February, Marty came on the show. He talked a little bit about, the release of public beta. We're excited that we've gotten so much feedback from everyone listening, from everybody using the software, that we have been reading every single one of them. So just so you know, it's not a black hole. Somebody's looking through all of those reviews and thinking about the challenges that you're facing. And we've implemented them, and we're continually making improvements to the site. And that's what I really want to focus here, is solving real problems and delivering real value to our users today.
That's great. And again, just a reminder, everybody who's using PolyLens has that ability to upload data and show everybody what's going on and be able to share what's going on and what their needs are so that we can develop off of that feedback, correct?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So keep
Okay,
them coming.
so show us what we've developed so far.
Sure. So before we get into that, a little bit of context. From that feedback, the number one thing that we've been hearing so far is that we want more control over our data. So in all my conversations with users, what it really comes down to is I can't get any diagnostic data when something's wrong. It takes way too long to solve. So that's what I'm going to share with you, a little bit of those screens. Share screen here now. So these are our new inventory graphs that you see here. At a high level, we have two main areas that you may be used to if you're used to being in PolyLens. We have our manage side and our insight side. What we've done is brought a lot of the insights over to manage. So while you're monitoring your equipment, taking care of it, taking care of updates, you can also dig into diagnostic data. So I've selected a very specific device here. It's one G7500. So the coolest thing about this is that you can look from a device level, from a room level, all the way up to a site level to see what's going on in a room or site or device at any point in time. So for this G7500, it defaults to a year. So for the entire year, what does our call usage look like? What does the online and offline device health look like? And even more so, we can go into specific months. And here I can go right into April if I think something happened in there. And so we can see peaks in call usage, giving us a little bit of data about how we're using this particular device.
So you can really drill in onto any specific time period that you'd like and see what the utilization was like and if there are any issues.
Exactly. And especially with device health is really important. So at a glance, you can already see that there are times when this device is online and offline. So this is a reoccurring pattern. And everyone that's been in this industry knows that there's a million reasons why a device could be offline, whether somebody's unplugging the device just because they're vacuuming every Friday and then replugging it in, somebody tripped over the wire and then, it's happened that one time and no one ever really plugged it back in. It could be firewalls, it could be web proxies, device settings, all, the list could go on. But seeing the data in front of you gives you that first pass into what's really happening inside of that room.
And do we have the ability to set up alarms based on data states that are coming in over there? I'm actually not really sure. I'm asking because I don't know.
That is something that we're working on, and it's something that's really popular, is that alerting. So no one's going in and looking at it at any point in time, but an email is sent or support tickets open automatically, or within your site, something pops up alerting you. It's something that's really of interest to our customers, so it'll be come through and working on with our development team.
Terrific. Thanks very much. And there was also the issue about understanding utilization, right? And understanding how the various rooms and systems that we have within our enterprise were showing up and whether we've got the equipment in the right place. And I understand we made some improvements in terms of the insights on that, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. An important topic on everyone's mind from the feedback we're seeing from people talking to us is just understanding room utilization and doing it in a very simple way, seeing what's happening in a room, especially during return to office. So let me switch to that view. So this is the entire site of Austin. So this way, because we can see more aggregated data, we can see how traffic is occurring. So for this particular graph, what's really cool is we can see traffic within the Austin office ramping up in our rooms since the beginning of the year. And we can also see the top 3 rooms that are seeing more folks using the rooms. And then that can give us an indication of if bigger rooms are being used, training rooms, smaller rooms, huddle rooms, right? And it's just really neat to see it in action. And the top one is room use, so how many minutes in a day that somebody is within a room. And below that is actually our people counting, which is how many heads we're counting within a meeting at any one point in time.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're getting data directly off the camera, directly off the system in the room, not specifically off of calls. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Even if there's no meeting happening in the room and somebody walks into that room, we'll be able to see them and it's tracked and it's put into this data set.
Now that's actually a really, really important point that I want to make sure that you've clarified and that I've clarified and that we've reinforced it. You can get call detail record data, how many calls have been used, how many minutes have been calls from any of the platforms that you're using, any of our wonderful partners that provide that. But they are not able to provide you with insights into the utilization of the room when you're not in calls. Or if you're using a specific piece of equipment that can work on multiple platforms and you're getting data from only one of those platforms, it doesn't know when you're making a call on the other platform. This data that we're looking at here is actual room data, treating the systems in the room as a sensor, and it's irrelevant of whether or not you're making calls, correct?
That's right. Yeah. And in that way, we can really get into the behavior metrics of that. So what that means is if somebody had scheduled the room but didn't show up, that's going to show in our data. And vice versa. If nobody scheduled the room, but people just hopped in because they just needed a quick way to meet with somebody, that's going to show up too. So it really digs into the behavioral, the next generation metrics that we're working on.
So again, I want you to keep me honest here because you know the platform much better than I do. If I'm a small to medium business or even a large business, but I'll take a small to medium business as the example, and I have 5 conference rooms. One is a small huddle room, and they're all various sizes up to a boardroom size. And I put poly endpoints in each one of the rooms: the Studio X30, the X50, the X70, the G7500. I use whatever the right appropriate system is for the room, and I put it in. And I set myself up to be monitored on PolyLens. I can come back to the PolyLens platform and say 2 or 3 months and know, regardless of what calls I've made and regardless if I haven't made any calls and regardless of what my platform partner is, whether it's Zoom or Teams or something else, I can look at the data to see which one of my rooms are underutilized, which ones are overutilized, and what's the pattern of utilization in the rooms. Is that accurate?
That's right. There's huge power in being able to see it through the endpoint.
So again, I don't know that any other platform or any other endpoint provider is giving this data when you're not in calls. I know of a number of them that are giving this based on call detail record, but you have to stop thinking of the Studio X30 and the Studio X50 and X70 as video conferencing endpoints, even though they're the best video conferencing endpoints on the planet, and start thinking about them as room sensors. that they can be put in a room regardless of video calling and be able to give you this data. You used to have to be able to go to third parties and put sensors in the ceiling in the room and on the chairs and under the tables, and do a lot of crazy mechanical things in order to understand how rooms are being utilized. And now you can look at this data after a couple of months and say, gee, the small rooms are being overutilized and the big rooms aren't. Let's have somebody come in and divide it and make the big room 3 smaller rooms. You can actually get actionable data to use.
Yep. And all the way, like I was showing, from a year to a quarter to a month, all the way to a day. Within the day, over 24 hours, you can see exactly how that room is being used.
Can you drill down and show us some of the stuff that we're looking at here for like a smaller period of time? Like show us a day or a week?
Let's look at the week, and then let's just navigate here. Let's take a week view to start with. So this one is pretty cool because you can see how traffic is within 1 week. So in this particular instance, you see employees kind of slowing back in on Monday, which is the 25th. And then as we get to hump day, everyone's ready to see their coworkers, right? And towards the end of the week, it's almost the weekend. So less people using the rooms within this office.
It looks like people here are taking longer weekends or working from home toward the weekends, which is perfectly fine. But again, that's great data to know, to have in your facility to be able to make good decisions based on anything that's going on.
Right. Like you touched on, this data could be used for facilities. If we're doing energy saving measures, we know how many folks to expect within the rooms. We can make decisions on protocols for health and safety. We can determine when folks can come into the office, when it might be better, lower traffic for folks to come later in the office. So many different decisions that can be made with this kind of data.
And can you drill in on the people counting as well?
Sure, yeah. So maybe we can look at that same week. So we can actually see this side by side now and see if there's any trends there. Let's go to April and then apply. And here it's coming up.
Yeah, it takes a little while to parse and load the data. I see that.
And here is our same people counting over the same course of time. So it pretty much is evened out, even though we do see more room use, the number of people in the rooms are about the same.
And I'm assuming we'll be able to compare this data to call detail record data to see how many times the rooms have people in them versus how many times they're in calls, and see what the difference is.
Yeah, and that goes back to how we're using the room. Right now, we don't have that way to see it, but we're working on ways to overlay meetings within the same graph so that, how many people are in this room versus when the meeting is occurring. Maybe we'll see when the meeting ends and then the meeting within the room is still going on. That's just the level of detail that we're hoping to bring to consumers soon.
And this software that you're sharing with us, this is readily available, right? This is GA. This is what people are using now.
That's correct. You can go in and click around and see exactly this right now.
How often do we update PolyLens? How often do we push new changes and features out?
The updates are, the data is updated hourly, if that's
Correct.
what you're asking.
No, I'm talking about how often do we make a change to the platform and add features typically?
It depends how often and how big the feature is going to be. This one in particular, I think it took us a couple of weeks, but yeah, we're constantly pushing out data and details and new features.
So in an agile framework, we're not actually waiting for pieces. As soon as we have it ready to go, it becomes available in the cloud and people can start using it.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, that's great news. And this is really valuable information. And again, that whole point that we're now offering this ability that's built into these endpoints to become room sensors and room monitors is really an amazing thing. Let's put aside the things that it can do now, and at a very high level sense, without making any guarantees or promises, talk to me about where we're going with Lens. What are the next kinds of features that we might see pushed out to the platform?
So we do have big plans on where we're going next. Like we've been talking about, We know that it's important for the return to office and the trend to more hybrid spaces that we want to know how our investments are being used, whether it's real estate or your equipment. So we're continually looking for new ways to capture the new employee experience within the office, how they're feeling, making sure that their experience and interactions with the space and with the devices in the room are positive. So that's what our focus is going to be over the next couple of weeks, months, to really up level this insight, to make sure that when consumers come in, they look at the data, it just makes sense. It's simple and it's elegant and directly tied to actionable data.
Okay, that's terrific. And again, you got to help me. I always want to emphasize these points that are not clear to some people, and whether they're clear to me. If you clarify it for me, others will figure it out. PolyLens is available now to everyone that owns a Poly endpoint at no additional cost. At least
That's
most of
correct.
the features are correct. So anybody who's using any of the current Poly endpoints can simply go to the cloud, go to PolyLens. If you want information about that, you go to poly.com to find out where and how, correct?
That's right. So everybody listening, go in, click around, see how it is, and give us feedback.
Right. So again, you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to change anything. If you've got the Poly endpoints, you have access to this information, this data that's only improving, and the team's working on it constantly. And it's absolutely, it's awesome to be able to understand that these things are room sensors now, in addition to just, call detail record providers, that we are able to move it forward. So again, if anybody wants to find any more information about Poly specifically or PolyLens or anything else, Katherine, where do they go?
They can go to poly.com for general information, and they can also reach out to me at katherine.li@poly.com.
Terrific. Katherine, thank you very much for joining us for this week. This is a great update. Can I ask you to come back when you got a couple of new features that we can share with people so we can keep everybody up to date?
Definitely. Thank you for having me, David.
Thank you, Katherine. I appreciate it. So that's it for this week's episode of Poly Weekly News. Next week it's really interesting. Next week is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, just about the halfway point of the year, and we're going to have a roundtable conversation with some of my favorite analysts and people in the industry to talk about what's happened, how far we've come, where we're going, what's going on, how we're recovering from the pandemic, back to the office, work from home, what the future looks like. It'll be a nice roundtable discussion. We'll be doing that one live. So for all of my colleagues here at Poly, I'm David Danto. Thanks very much for watching, and we will see you next week.